So as I said, I'm a student here at BLIS at the moment. I've been here since the 6th grade, and I'm now a senior here. So throughout my whole life, I've always been involved in sports and just anything that really has to do with anything physical. I mean, whether it was going to my local gym or just trying out anything else that they randomly have playing on a field where I see with people. So I may not look like it as much now, as I've lost about 7 to 8 kilograms because I haven't been able to continue this lifestyle due to recent medical conditions that I've experienced. So over the past 2 years, I have had 8 pneumothoraces. So a pneumothorax is pretty much when your lung collapses. And like, let's say if my right hand is my lung, and if any hole opens up around my lung, this causes air to escape into my chest cavity, and then this creates pressure in the chest cavity, and because of this, your lung is can no longer inflate. So I experienced all 8 pneumothoraces, all in my right lung. So a pneumothorax usually happens after trauma, so like if you have a car accident, or if you're shot, or through sports, if you break a rib, your lung usually collapses like that, but mine were all spontaneous. And pretty much there's no main cause for why I had all these health issues. It's mostly because my right lung is simply too small for my rib cage. And this is most likely because I grew too fast. And pneumothoraces are mostly seen in tall, young, thin, and otherwise healthy people. So my first pains began in August of 2015 in America. So when I first felt these pains, I mostly just brushed them off. I thought of them to just be like heartburn or something. I took like 8 Tums tablets in a day or something because I thought it was just heartburn. So I even tried working out. I tried just living my normal life, but a few days in, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do this and that I needed to go to a doctor. So we went to the doctors and I took x-rays and they said that there was nothing wrong. So I thought maybe it was just my subconscious or something and I had been working myself too hard, so I decided to rest anyways. But the next morning, my mom came in and woke me up and said that they called and reevaluated my x-ray and that my right lung was 40% collapsed. So normally when you have your first lung collapse, you do not need a chest tube. A chest tube is pretty much a drain which they put in through your side, and this is made to drain the excess air which is in your chest cavity, which is stopping you from being able to breathe properly. But since I had a flight to catch back to Turkey in about a week, they put a chest tube in my side. So after they put this chest tube in, it stayed inside of me for about 17 hours until my lung was completely inflated again. And they simply took it out, and then a few days later I was able to fly back to Turkey. And I couldn't fly on a plane with a collapsed lung because cabin pressure, that would cause possibly life-threatening issues to me while I was on the plane. So doctors said that I wouldn't be allowed to do sports for about a month, but I did not listen to them at all. I was back in the gym in about 3 days, and I really do regret that. So about a month later, after school had started, I was sitting in my IGCSE math lesson, and then suddenly I just had a sudden pain in my right side. And I told my student sitting next to me, my friend sitting next to me, and he said that I should alert the teacher. And I waited about 5 minutes, and then I realized that I did need to tell the teacher. And she sort of hesitated in sending me because, I mean, whose students' lung collapses in your class and they're still like up to talk about it and stuff. Even though I was in a lot of pain, I didn't really show it too much. So they quickly called an ambulance to the school. I was transported off to the hospital. And then I had a much larger chest tube, one that I could about like fit my pinky through, put in through my side. And it is not a pleasant experience as they use local anesthetic. They can use it for the incision space, but when they're pushing the tube inside to go all the way to the top of your chest, there's no anesthetic in there. So after I had this, I stayed in the hospital for about 5 days. And then after these 5 days, I was released and just allowed to go. And my parents didn't tell me this, but the doctor told them that there was about a 70 to 80% chance that I was going to have a lung collapse again. Because if you have 2 lung collapses, there's a high chance that you have something called BLEBs. And BLEBs are pretty much just weakness in the top of the lung tissue. And these little bubbles pop and release air into your chest cavity, which causes the pressure and then leads to a pneumothorax. So about 2 weeks later, over Kurban Bayramı in 2015 September, about 10:30 at night, I experienced the same pains of a lung collapse again. And this pain is very specific. You can only understand if you felt it. It's the fleshiness of your lung trying to fill up while you're breathing and it still can't completely inflate. Or it's the, like, whether, let's say I was in the car with my mom driving and she'd turn to the right, I'd feel the inertia in my lung would flop to the left or flop to the right depending on where she turned. Or like if you would put your hand on my chest and I would dip forward and back, you could feel my lung flop forward and flop back. So I went to the hospital and then immediately the doctor knew that I needed to have a larger surgery. So the next morning I had a surgery called VATS, and this is video-assisted thoracic surgery. So in this surgery, they basically go in through about 3 to 4 surgically placed holes, and they have a machine which cuts the top of my lung off and sews it at the same time. And they also have different equipment to hold my lung in place and stuff like that. So they basically cut this part of my lung which have the blebs, and they took it out of me, and then they also stuck my lung to my chest wall so that if it did collapse again, only part of it could collapse and it wouldn't pose a life-threatening situation. So about 2 months later, after having this VATS surgery and spending about a week in the hospital, one night in the ICU, I was back in the gym, and I felt fine. Honestly, I just had post-operation pain, which was expected things, but besides that, I was quite happy with the way I was feeling. So this all happened in 2015, and after all of this, I still had pains, like I said, but in about 2017, November, I was in basketball practice this year, and I suddenly felt pain. And I hadn't had a checkup in a while, so I decided to go and get a checkup just for the heck of it. And then after getting x-rays, they found a 1-centimeter-long laceration in the top of my lung. But doctors said that they weren't going to do anything about it because the VATS surgery I had, they said it was impossible for my lung to collapse, and it basically just sent me home. But for about a month, my lung just kept deflating and inflating the small amount. Like one of our teachers, Mr. Machen, had said, my lung was like a yo-yo. It kept going down and up and back down and back up again. So after about a month of this, I unfortunately proved my doctors wrong and my lung collapsed completely. And I had this whole fleshiness feeling and everything, and I knew what had happened. So I just called my dad, went to the hospital, and then on December 17th, it completely collapsed. On December 18th, I had the surgery. And then this time, they didn't just open up 3 holes. I had about a 20-centimeter incision in my side. And they basically, they tried to find the blebs in the holes in my lung. They filled my chest wall with a fluid like you would with a tire to find air leaking out of it. And they also filled my lung to more than it could actually take to see if there was any air coming up, but they did not find anything. So I got out of surgery, and they had another tube in me. And then about 3 days later, after the surgery, my lung had collapsed while I was still in the hospital after they found all this stuff, after they looked through all this stuff, and they didn't find anything. So, I mean, I had mixed emotions then. I'm going through all this pain. I had a day in the ICU, and is this all for nothing? Am I going to go through all this all again? And I wasn't really sure how to feel about it. And they knew that my lung collapsed again because I had something that I would call a blood bucket, which is basically the bottom of my tube. And this helps to regulate chest pressure and to take the fluids and blood that's coming out of my lung, and it basically just drains it. So when I would flex my abdominals, you could see the blood bubble up in there, and that was because I had air in my chest cavity and it would force it out. So, and then, since it's bodily trauma that my body has experienced, my mind has definitely experienced a backlash of all of this. This experience was not just physically, it was also mentally, emotionally, just everything, after not knowing what to feel. I mean, I would sit in the hospital bed just questioning, why would this happen to me when I had never touched a cigarette in my life? Why would it happen to me when I would spend 2 to 3 hours in the gym every day to keep myself in the best shape I could? Why would it happen to me when it would affect me the most? And eventually, after sitting, I had a lot of time to think, except for when my friends and everything would come and visit. I had a lot of time to think, and I realized that this questioning, this complaining, I realized that it was all nonsense and it was completely pointless. The I wishes, the I wouldas, the couldas, the shouldas, those just don't matter after a point, because sometimes you just have to accept reality, and you can't daydream hours on end about what could have happened because that didn't happen. Would you rather live in fake happiness, or would you rather accept the negative parts of your life and then work to make your daydreams a reality? There's a Russian proverb that I like a lot that says, "I'd rather be slapped with the truth than kissed with a lie." You were given a hand of cards at life, and the only thing you can do is do the best with the cards that you received. The best you can be is the best version of yourself. You can't be the best version of someone else because you're not going to get another hand of cards at life. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should just give up and accept the way things are. You still have to actually strive, and you have to work towards being that best version of yourself, because that's not going to be handed to you. You do have to accept some things which are in your control, and this can be very hard and was very hard for me. Today you have to accept that it's going to rain. There's nothing you can do about it, and there's many more examples I could give about things which aren't in your control. But the things which are in your control, those all fall down to you, like starting with your attitude towards life or the struggles that you're going through. And this all connects to how we should view life and the trials of life, and ultimately our perspective towards them, because it can change everything that happens after these struggles. Like if we would imagine that there's a river in a canyon, and there's being right next to the river, hearing its roar. There's being at the top of the canyon, hearing it whisper through the rock and getting to you. And then there's being in a plane above the river, seeing it. So sometimes you can find yourself in the river and drowning, trying to stay afloat. And this is pretty much the struggles in life. While you're drowning, you're almost drowning, trying to stay afloat. But there's always rocks when you get near the rapids. And it all falls down to you, whether you can find the strength in yourself to grab onto a rock and get out of the river. Once you get out of that river, you always have the choice to book a plane ticket. That's all down to you. And once you get in that plane and you see that river 30,000 feet in the air, you can see that this river goes out to the vastness of the ocean, and you can see how much more opportunity and what the struggles of your life are going to take you to, because it all happens for a reason. Perspective can change from having a growth mindset and understanding that things happen for a reason and that they can teach you things and that they will eventually take you to the vastness of the ocean. Or it can change to self-pity and for yourself, and like I fed negativity to myself, asking why me. I mean, it's funny how we only realize sometimes the value of things after we've lost them. Like being able to sleep on my side, or being able to get up by myself and go to the bathroom, not having to gasp for breath, or having 3 people pick me up out of bed at the same time, or not having a tube stuck to me and I have to carry it around, or being able to stand up straight. After you experience, it's sad that you have to experience these struggles to be thankful for the small things in life, because the actual beauty in life is in the details, and there's never a time where it's appropriate to say, why me? As there's always so much to be thankful for, and we just never realize it because we don't think hard enough with all the distractions we have today. And I still do believe that I'm struggling and trying to stay afloat, but I do have a glimpse of what I want, is in the ocean that's going to come to me. All of these struggles I face, I believed happened for a reason, and I've come to the realization, thanks to what has happened, to pursue a career in physical therapy and help others like myself. Thank you.